Hello everybody, Christian from Treasure Town here, and today we're going to be going over the top 20 most valuable Morgan dollars. These are coins that you should be looking for, whether it's going through a bag of Morgan dollars or collection in a coin shop, or you're cherry picking things online on eBay or at a coin show. There's some really rare Morgans that you can try to pick up on, plus the later ones, the number 1, number 2, number 3, probably impossible to find, but it's really fun to just know that they're out there and that they exist. So, gonna start, we actually got 3 bonus ones as I made the presentation. This is a first year, so Morgans were made from 1878 to 1904, then again in 1921. The whole range is gonna be in this presentation, but the reverse is this eagle. They have tail feathers, and so there's this design. I believe at first they were making 8 tail feathers, then they made 7, but they also had a few dies where they kind of stamped the 7 tail feathers over the 8, and so there's these different ones protruding beneath it. It's not like a crazy valuable coin, but it's a little bit better, and it's definitely one of the findable types. Plus it's first year, so people find that interesting, but certainly going to raise the value a little bit. Similarly, we've got the O over S Morgan silver dollar. I probably should have gotten a better close-up here, but there's different mint marks, and we'll be covering all of them. Except for Denver, but Denver's only 1921. There's also San Francisco, which makes coins the whole way through. And then New Orleans is the O mint, and Carson City is the CC mint. And in this case, it would have been first struck for San Francisco because they would make all the dies back in Philadelphia and then kind of send them out without the mint marks to the different mints, and then they would punch the mints there. So here it first got struck with an S mint mark, and then it got hit with an O. And so pretty interesting. I found a few of these before in bags, so they're definitely ones to look for. And then 1888 O, there's what's known, and this one has a little bit of a higher value as the Scarface, and so it's basically a large die break because these dies are hammering a bunch of Morgan dollars, and they're being struck really with a lot of pressure, so sometimes the metal dies chip or break. And in this case, in 1888, at the New Orleans Mint, there was a die on the obverse that started to break, and you can see the crack that then forms. So it's not that it's wear or a scratch, it's really a valuable coin. And in mint state, that can be a really quite valuable item, even if it's a few $100s for their circulated versions. 1888 O wasn't the only, the Scarface wasn't the only thing to look for. There's a double die obverse, so sometimes they would, use multiple sinking or striking of the dies that then strike the coins. And so a double die, it's not that the coin somehow was double struck, but rather the die that was used to strike the coin gets misproduced basically. And so in this case, you can see they call it hot lips because it's such clear doubling around the lips, but there's also the chin, the nose, and then even like in the leaves, you can see this clear shelving and doubling all throughout the obverse. It's not crazy valuable, but certainly in better conditions it can be. So something to check for. And sometimes you see these in graded holders and they weren't attributed. So I've seen it at a coin show on some other VAMs where a buyer is basically able to identify some pretty rare varieties and VAMs. So this one, thankfully, I have it pretty clearly. I've also found this one. It's an O over CC Morgan silver dollar. In 1900, the Carson City in Nevada was not minting any coins anymore, so they had a die. Somehow it got punched with the CC, but they struck the O over it, so it's pretty affordable, and I've seen some worse condition ones go for under $200, so if you want to get a cheap Carson City overdate and variety, it's something that I would look out for. But similar situation there, except I don't know why they would have actually struck CC into a 1900 because they weren't even making CC Morgans in 1899 or 98. 1903S, similarly, that's one of the later dates. I don't think we have 1904, but right before they stopped producing them until after World War I. Whole different story on that front. Most of these with the S mint mark are going to have a large S, but I believe it was probably like used for a quarter or some other smaller denomination, but they had some of the micro S punches, so you can really see it's a tiny S mint mark compared to that one. Much smaller, tighter serifs, and very little space between the long sections of the S. 1879 CC has what's known as the capped die. I'm a little unclear exactly how this, but I think it's some sort of die rust error because there's all of this, you can kind of see down here rusting and like pitting around the mint mark, and so it's not that that's some kind of damage, it's actually something that's sought after. As a side note, well, we'll talk about Carson City mint soon, but any 1879 CC is going to be exciting to find, but particularly with this cap die variety. Number 16, this is thought to maybe be the reason some of the Carson Cities are so well popularized. There were, and I don't want to get this story wrong, but there were lots of Morgan dollars sitting in treasury bags as people could redeem silver certificates. The silver dollars were quite unpopular, actually, which is always interesting to think about. And so this would have been an effort, and I think there were 7 series where they released coins from the treasury vaults and sold them to collectors in these like GSA, General Services Administration packaging, and then they pocketed the difference between $1 and the price that they charged. And if they had melted all of these, I think it's something like 73% of all Carson City Morgan dollars outstanding were from the GSA hoards. And so they often still come in these GSA holders. You can get those holders graded by, NGC will grade it. They won't take it out of the packaging. And so they split them up into like uncirculated and circulated and a few other like worse. And there were some non-CC GSA coins, but most of them were. And, you could like order them from the GSA at some allotment. So a lot of old collections will have some of these. They're all quite valuable, and 100, it's going to be worth more than 100 at this point. 15, deep mirror Prooflike Morgan silver dollars. So basically a really big contrast between a frosty surface and then this kind of mirrory fields, and these are struck from the very first strikes off of a new die. I was talking about the die doubling process. That's what actually strikes the coins. And so what happens here is it's very frosty, and then after striking hundreds or thousands of coins, that goes away and it just creates the normal strike that we see. But they're nicely prepared, they're very mirrory, there's regular Prooflike coins, and those are just going to be generally quite valuable. People really like those frosty, mirrory surfaces. Number 14 is generally Carson City Morgan's silver dollars. So basically below the eagle's tail, you're going to see this ribbon, and then below that, if there's no mint mark, it's from Philadelphia, but if it's 2 C's, it's the only mint mark in America where we had 2 letters. They were generally rare. They were minted to strike silver from the Comstock lode out in Nevada, and not have to transport it all the way to San Francisco, Carson City, I believe it's Nevada's capital. And they're pretty rare. They're definitely attainable in circulated condition, but there's different rare dates. The GSA really contributed to which ones would be rare, or made some coins not rare when they released many thousands of them. And so 1889 is the best one, but literally anytime you see a CC mint mark, you got a good coin. So they made them in 1878. I think they maybe stopped in 93, but don't quote me on that. Number 13, we've got the Shifted Eagle Morgan silver dollar, and so it's kind of on the reverse. I don't think it's the same as like a double die, but maybe it is. Basically, there's going to be this doubling and shelving and doubling might be the wrong term if it's not a double die, but on the reverse, it could have been that it was like one die impression and then it shifted as it was making the die, as opposed to being truly like 2 different strikes of the die. But you see this kind of doubling in the wings, doubling in the leaves, doubling in it's almost like that 8/7 tail feathers, and pretty rare. $300 for VG is better than some of these other varieties we've discussed. And number 12, kind of just a crazy item, sold at heritage auctions for about $9,600. It was a canceled San Francisco Morgan dollar die, so some kind of a Morgan dollar, and that's why I also added the 23 for the top 20. Some of these are just going to be kind of novelty items, and so this would have been, it's kind of the reverse impression, would have been striking tons of Morgan dollars, and that's why they have the inverse, is because obviously it strikes into the die and leaves the opposite impression, and so they put that X through it so that people couldn't take the die and start just striking their own Morgan dollars. But nice $9,600 price for that, achieved pretty recently. And then this could be rarer than it is. I don't think any of them have been auctioned, but the first 1878, I mentioned it was 78 to 1904, then 1921, of the Morgan dollars. They were engraved one of the first 10 coin. And I think this one was a presentation. Eliasberg super famous collection, graded specimen 64. It's not a details coin. Most of the time some kind of graffiti would be viewed as an issue, but I'd be really excited to see what this would sell for. It very well could rocket up this list if I do an update, and a few of these have crossed the auction block. And then right here, this is kind of the most, and we have it to P just to remind people, there were proof Morgan dollars. Often the mintages were about 1,000 or less, so specially prepared collector's dies that are going to be very likely to be it's not proof-like, it is a proof, so you see those mirror surfaces, and this one looks more cameo because there's a bunch of contrast between the main face and the fields, and they've sold, some of them circulated, like people didn't realize that they were rare, and so they circulated. Those are like $40,000 to $50,000, and my prices, don't go by my prices, I would go by a more accurate, if you're actually going to buy something that's expensive, but they're more just like ballpark. Nicer condition can range beyond 100,000 easily, but this is kind of 1893, Panic of 1893, a little bit of an economic depression era, and so less of these are available on the market, and they're rarer. So yes, similar, we'll talk about 1893 coins later. There's also, the Zerb Special Strike 1921S. Again, we make coins in 1921, we then shift over to the peace dollar. It has to do with some government contracts and helping out Britain. More on that in a future video, but there were a few kind of special strike. This one wasn't quite proof, but I think Zerb was like either a collector or a famous dealer, and often you could literally, if you knew the mint masters, get a bunch of coins struck for you, pay a little bit of a premium, more for collectors, and it's not a very well covered issue. It probably warrants its own entire video, the special strike Morgans from 1921S, but the coin definitely does not look like a regular circulating strike, and many of them are over $100,000. These are going to be the first in a theme of what are called branch mint proofs. So the proofs are always struck at the Philadelphia Mint for the Morgan silver dollars, except the ones that aren't. But those are extremely rare and extremely valuable because they were generally not made with any kind of mint authority, and they were minted in very, very small quantities and under quite unknown circumstances. And so it's going to be a theme. I'm not going to get into too much of the specific history of each branch mint proof, but I do want to make sure that there's kind of adequate covering of the different dates and mint marks, though there are likely a few that didn't make it into this video. But the prices kind of speak for themselves. This sold for $170,000. An 1879 O, so it also shows the existence that these were made across different mints. This was sold for $176,000, and you can just see that it's like more reflective fields. These are specially prepared dies. It's not, but there's also, I know I've been in coin shops before, and they're trying to discern, is this a branch mint proof or not? Because often it's pretty questionable, and if something is, it can elevate its value from, $170 to $170,000. 1884 CC, this is really, you can tell, but at the same time, different things happen with different dies. I've seen, regular business strike coins that don't look that dissimilar from this. It's obviously a cameo coin, so now that I'm saying that, it clearly looks different, but it takes an eye that's seen a lot of these, but it's also possible to discover these out in the wild. Though that's probably like a once in a lifetime. I would guess less than 10 of them exist unknown out in the wild. Maybe that's wrong though. Maybe there's like 50. I don't know. Sold for $184,000. 1893 CC. This one really nice toning, over 200K. That was a big marker. And then this is the Chapman proof from 1921. So similar how there was the special Zerb strike from 21S. Chapman, I think he was a collector, and I want to say he had like 10 or 50 of these made, somewhere in that range. And this one was a particularly nice example, sold for $240,000, but super proofy 1921, but with different diagnostics and kind of a very unique proof style. And so, very interesting how just those interconnections would have enabled collectors to get some extremely rare coins headed their way. This sold for $240,000 and puts it at number 4 on the list, behind, I believe, another branch mint proof. This one from 1883 was up to $270,000 and just continuing to climb. And we see again there's O mints, S mints, CC mints, and rare, even Philadelphia mint coins. 1895 O. Again, 1895 is going to be one of those better dates, tougher dates to find. So this one elevates all the way to over $500,000. It's been preserved in very nice condition. You can see that clear kind of proof die preparation on a very already rare date, coming in around that panic of 1893 and a general pullback in terms of economic sentiment in the United States. And that leads us to our number 1 coin. And I'm really happy that it's just a regular business strike that's going to be the number 1 Morgan silver dollar, which is the 1893S Morgan silver dollar. This is a coin, people have found these on their, in a collection before, because this is the most expensive Morgan dollar because of its condition. Sold for over $2 million, $2,086,875 at a great collections auction. Has some provenance. It was only owned by 4 people, and it was auctioned raw, not in a holder, in the early 2000s, and it graded mint state 67 with CAC approval. Just a beautiful coin. There's talk that that's even a conservative grade for this coin, and the thought is that it was probably handled specially, never went into a mint bag, because the next, this is a key date. So 1893S, that's really the key date of the Morgan silver dollar series. And when you think about it, like mint state 67, there's no mint state 66 pluses, there's no mint state 66s, there's no mint state 65 pluses. It's 2 grades higher than the next nicest coin of this key date, which just puts it in an entirely new league. It has really interesting toning, probably hasn't been touched or dipped in acetone or anything like that, with that toning. I could be wrong on that one, but it's really been preserved nicely. Kind of a comment here, you want to look for this die diagnostic on the T. There's a ton of fake 1893S obviously out there, just given the rarity, and so I'm super proud to be able to say that, just a regular 1893S that just got struck really well is our top coin here, over $2 million. There's plenty more. I have to make like a top 20 VAMs, because really the last VAM that we were looking at is this 1901 Shifted Eagle, but those are basically more the die varieties that you're just looking for on a coin, as opposed to any super specific, this is a presentation piece or this is a proof. On the circulating coins. But really enjoyed making this video, and let me know how I could improve these types of videos going forward. I want to provide as much good education to the collecting community as possible. Thanks for watching the video. Make sure to head on over to treasuretown.com and sign up for our email list to stay up to date on everything that's happening, whether it's auction updates, exciting new inventory drops, coin collecting news, or general informational resources. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you on another one.